guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm finally going to be filming my birth story. I filmed this a couple times already, but I've had issues with the footage, so I'm going to try not to ramble in this video and get straight to the point. So I'm just going to jump right into it. So a little backstory. I got pregnant when I was 18 and I gave birth when I was 19. And I ended up being induced when I was at 39 weeks. I was due October 30th. So just a quick backstory on why I was induced. Basically, my OB had some concerns about my subchorionic hemorrhage, which I had early in my pregnancy, which is basically just a bleed in your uterus from where the baby sac has pulled away from the uterine lining. She was concerned, and I had that bleed from about 10 to 20 weeks, but it resolved. She was concerned that it might have caused a little bit of damage to my placenta, and she didn't want the placenta to age prematurely, basically, which can cause an issue with lack of blood flow to the baby, and so she didn't want me to go past 39 weeks. So my doctor thought that my best chance at a successful vaginal birth would be an induction at 39 weeks. So, side note, if y'all want me to make a video about my subchorionic hemorrhage, which was kind of like a miscarriage scare early in my pregnancy, let me know, because I could definitely make a video about that. So anyways, I went in to begin the process on October 23rd. I was exactly 39 weeks. I went in at I was supposed to go in at 7 p.m. I actually went in at about 8 p.m. And at that point I had been dilated to 1 centimeter and 70% effaced. And so the doctor wanted to insert cervidil to soften my cervix further and start me on pitocin in the morning. So when I got to the hospital, I had really bad nerves. Immediately when I walked in and I saw a nurse wearing like a, what are they called? Like the scrub cap thing, I was like terrified. And I just started, like, it all started hitting me at once that I was about to give birth, and I was just scared. And so anyways, they took me into my room. I changed into my hospital gown. I'll try to remember to insert the picture of me, like, sitting in my hospital gown with my labor gown and labor socks, and I'm like, and anyways, they gave me an IV, which hurt, and then a nurse came and inserted the cervidil, which was painful, but it was pretty much just as painful as getting my cervix checked. And I had still been at about a 1 at that point. Getting my cervix checked was always painful. From the first time I got my cervix checked at like 34 weeks up until the end, it was so painful, and like I was not prepared for that. But anyways, she put the cervidil in, and I couldn't go to the bathroom for like 2 hours, and then I could like get up and do whatever. So they kept that in all night, and I was hooked up to the monitors that monitor my contractions and the baby's heartbeat, and they gave me, I think it was Ambien or something, to help me sleep that night, which didn't really help. I did barely sleep. I was up to pee every 2 seconds, and it was hard because I was taking off the monitors every time. And anyways, so I had really bad nerves, and I wasn't really contracting overnight, so I wasn't in labor yet. So in the morning, the doctor came and took out my cervidil, which was a little painful, and I think at that point I was at a 2, but I was more effaced. I think I was at a 2 and like 90% effaced. And at that moment, she broke my water, which felt weird. It just feels like a gush of warm liquid, and then like every time I would contract, more would gush out, and it's weird feeling. It's not how I expected it to feel. It felt like I was peeing. But anyways, so she broke my water when she took the cervidil out, and I was at a 2. And she was like, okay, you can get the epidural at any point now. And I was like, okay, I'm good for now. Like, I'm gonna wait. And she was like, okay. And before, the plan had been to start me on low dose pitocin. For some reason, the doctor changed her mind, and she was like, we're gonna start you on high dose pitocin. And I was like, okay. And you know, there's a few moments there when I was feeling okay after she broke my water, because I was really scared to get the cervidil out and get my cervix checked, because I just hated having my cervix checked. So there's a few moments when I was feeling okay. And so then they're gonna start the high dose pitocin, and I start getting a little scared. But so they came and hooked it up to my IV, and immediately I get like a really strong cramp, and I was like, oh wow, you know, I was like holding onto the hospital bed a little bit, because they made me lay on my side after they broke my water, and they said that I couldn't get up because they didn't want the baby to come down too fast and the cord to slip down under her head. So they said I need to lay on my side, and they would come move me every 30 minutes. So I was on my side, and I was like holding onto the hospital bed a little bit. I was like, wow, that was pretty painful. And then I get another one like 2 minutes later, and it was a little more painful. And within like 15 minutes, I'm contracting pretty much every minute to 2 minutes. The worst pain that I've ever felt in my whole life. I was like, wow, this is insane. Like, I did not realize the labor made you wish that you were dead. Like, I was begging to be knocked unconscious. Like, it was really bad. And at first I had refused the narcotic pain medication, and then they came by again, and I was like, yeah, I want the whatever you can give me. So they gave me something, I don't remember what it was, but it was some kind of narcotic pain medication through my IV, and immediately I started feeling like woozy, like I was gonna pass out, and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna pass out, I don't know what's happening. They're like, oh, it's just medication. And the medication didn't really help my pain, but it did make me relax a little bit. So a lot of people don't want to get that a lot of people don't want to get the narcotics for pain relief during labor because they say it makes you loopy, which it does, and I think that's what helped me, because it helped me calm down just a little bit. Okay, I apologize if the camera angle changed. There are some technical difficulties. But anyways, as I was saying, even though I got the narcotic medication, I was still feeling my contractions full force, and it was fairly excruciating, and there was basically no break in between them. It just went from like 0 to 100 real fast. Once they started the pitocin, there was no like lag time. It was just like full force contractions right away, 1 minute apart, basically. So that was scary and hard. So anyways, I decided I wanted my epidural. So I asked the nurse, like, okay, I want my epidural now. And they were like, okay, we have to give you like 2 bags of fluid first. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they gave me they started me on the fluids, and the nurse came and checked my cervix, and she was like, oh, you're at a 4 or a 5. I'm gonna go get the anesthesiologist. And I was like, okay. And later my mom told me that when the nurse was like walking out the door, she like said to another nurse, like, she's a 6, don't tell her, because she thought I would be scared because I was progressing really quickly, and you can't get the epidural after a certain point, which is why she was like, I'm gonna go get the anesthesiologist. So eventually, it felt like a long time, but it really wasn't. The anesthesiologist came in, and they had me like sit up, and they raise up the hospital bed and lay it flat, and they have you like hunch over a pillow, and it was hard because I was like, I don't think I can sit up during my contractions. Like, I don't think I can do that. I have to like stay here. And they're like, no, you can do it. Just tell us when you have a contraction. My nurses were so amazing. They were like, just tell us when you have a contraction. We'll hold your hands. Like, we're going to be right there with you, and it's going to be fine. And there was no one else in the room when I got my epidural except for the nurses. So I think my anesthesiologist was getting kind of annoyed because I was like, I'm having a contraction. And he was like, okay, like, we have to do this anyways. I was like, oh, I'm scared. And my whole pregnancy, I had been like terrified of the epidural. And so when it came to it, I wasn't scared because of how much pain I was in. But basically, he put the numbing medication, and the rest of it, I mean, it just felt like a flu shot, just like a shot in my back. And the rest of it just felt like he was fiddling around with everything. And it was not painful. Like, it was a breeze. Easiest part of labor by far. And so it took like 10 minutes, and he tapes like the catheter up. Is that what it's called? Yeah, the like tube thing of medicine. I don't think that's called a catheter. I can't think of what it's called, but he like tapes it up your shoulder or whatever. And So then they have you lay flat on your back so the medication like evenly disperses, and each contraction started getting easier. And at one point, like, I started feeling more on one leg than I was the other, and so they had me like move to that side so the medication would like disperse out. And I never went numb completely. Like, I always had feeling in my legs. I always could feel everything, but it just took significant amount of pain away. But I could move my legs, I could feel them, I could feel my contractions. Every time I had a contraction, I knew I was having one, but it was just like a significant decrease in the pain. But it was still painful, but like I could talk through them and everything like that. And I started feeling pressure like really low, like it felt like it was in my butt, and I was like getting kind of scared. So I kept saying to the nurse, like, is this normal? Like, I'm feeling all this pressure down there. And she's like, oh yeah, it's fine. I was like, okay. So then they're like, oh, we have to put your catheter in since you can't get up to go to the bathroom when you have the epidural. And I was like, okay, like, I'm nervous because I could still feel down there. And she was like, oh, I'm the fastest person in getting the catheter in. Like, you'll barely even know I did it. Like, it's so easy. And I was like, okay. And so she goes to put the catheter in, and I feel it. Like, I have feeling and sensation, and I'm like, this is kind of like uncomfortable. I was like, okay, this is kind of uncomfortable. And so then the nurse is like having trouble, and she's like, I can't really seem to get it. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the other nurse comes over, and she's like, let me see what's going on, and I'm just gonna check her cervix. So she checked my cervix, and she was like, oh, that's why the catheter's not going in. It's baby time. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you're at a 10, like, you're complete, it's time to push. And I was like, what? I was so scared. Like, I started shaking even harder than I already was, because I was shaking this entire time I was in labor and for like a day after. So I was just shaking, and everything started happening so fast. Like, my mom came back in the room, and the doctor came back in, and all these extra nurses came in. They took off the lower part of the bed, and I think they like leaned me back and put the leg stirrups in. So when they first started getting me to push, they were like, oh yeah, hold your legs back and like lean down, put your chin down and push. I was like, okay. And they're like, don't hold tension in your legs, just let them be loose and hold them. And I'm like, I cannot focus on doing this many things at once. So other people ended up holding my legs. I don't even remember who. I guess it was nurses, but I would push 3 times for each contraction, and I would just like do my chin down and hold my breath for 10 seconds 3 times basically. And my doctor didn't like tell me when to push or anything, because I could feel when to push, and I felt when my contractions were coming. I didn't like wait for my doctor to be like, okay, you're having a contraction, you can go now, because I felt my contraction and I felt the urge to push. Because a lot of people with epidurals, they go like completely numb and they don't know when to push, or they can't feel what they're doing. I could feel it. I could feel myself pushing. It was excruciatingly painful. And the doctor was going like this with her fingers around the baby's head to like stretch me out, I guess, to prevent tearing, which did not work. But anyways, that was incredibly painful to have her fingers in there while I was trying to push. So I kept asking, like, am I doing it right? Is she coming down? Like, and they were like, yeah, it's fine. Because I was just so scared that they were going to be like, oh, she's not coming, like, time to go to a C-section. Or they were going to be like, oh, this could be a couple hours or something. So I was just scared. But I pushed for about 30 minutes, and the doctor was like, okay, she's crowning. You're going to feel the ring of fire. And I was like, okay. And they kept saying like, oh, I can see her dark hair and everything, which made me excited. And I'm like thinking I'm at the finish line and everything. So she tells me that I'm crowning and I'm going to feel the ring of fire. And I sure did. It was so painful. I think contractions were probably still more painful because the epidural takes a little bit of the edge off of the pushing, even though it was still very, very painful. Definitely wasn't numb. And I don't think the epidural failed or anything, because it did help for a significant, it gave me like 30 minutes to rest before I had to push, which was very nice. And I don't know what I would have done if I didn't get that. So definitely worth getting it. And I think by the time I got my epidural, I was at like a 7 or an 8. So, because of how quickly I was progressing. So anyways, I felt the ring of fire. I pushed her head out and then her body, and she was born at 1:29 p.m. on October 24th. She weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces, and she was 20 3/4 inches long. And it was such a beautiful moment because I could just feel like such a huge release, emotionally, spiritually, physically. For one thing, the pain just stopped completely. And then just like all this fear that I had during my pregnancy with like the miscarriage scare and just all these things when I was scared of losing her. And she was here and she was crying and she was nice and pink and so healthy, and they laid her on my chest and it was just an amazing moment. I was crying so hard. And it was just a wonderful experience. I also forgot to mention, when I was pushing, they asked me if I wanted to reach down and feel her head. I was pushing her out, and I was like, no thank you. They also asked if I wanted a mirror so I could see what I was doing, and I was like, I would really rather not. But anyways, it was a very, very quick and intense labor experience. For like the couple days after, I felt pretty like traumatized about the whole thing, which I assume is normal-ish. But I kind of want to do a whole separate video about the postpartum adjustment period and recovery, because my recovery was not easy. I had 3rd-degree tearing, which is fairly severe, so I had a lot of stitches. And postpartum period in general was very difficult, and so I want to do a video about that because that was the thing I was the least prepared for through pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, and parenting. The thing I was least prepared for was those first couple of weeks after the baby was born, and so I would love to make a video about that. If y'all have any questions about my labor experience, please let me know. And just as a recap, so I know I got like the times a little mixed up, but I was in labor for about 4 hours total, and I pushed for 30 minutes. So that is very quick for a first-time mom being induced at 39 weeks. So I think my body was definitely ready to go into labor. But if anyone else wants to share their labor stories in the comments below, I'd love to hear them. And I hope to get some more videos out for y'all soon. Please like and subscribe before y'all go, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!